Welcome to The State of Us. Real people with honest opinions and the future of responsible media. Here's your host, Justin T. Weller.
Biology textbooks used in American high schools do not go near the sensitive question of whether genetics can explain why African Americans are overrepresented as football players and why a disproportionate number of American scientists are white or Asian, according to the opening paragraph from a New York Times article. It's entitled "Science Class Defies Racism with Genetics." It's a little different topic today, but why do you care whether or not we talk about racism in school at all? But specifically, why would we bring it up in science class? Well, you've got such a critical time in young people's lives. And I think one of the big things that they face is kids hear all these different things. And if there's not a space for them to make sense of these things, to talk about them in some kind of structured way, they will either come to their own conclusion, which may not be informed, or allow, particularly in this day and age, social media to form those opinions for them. And wouldn't it be better to actually definitively answer some of these tough questions that kids are often so good at bringing up, rather than to let it fester? Well, that's what we're going to talk about today, because there are some schools that are actually trying something here. But of course, we couldn't begin a conversation on education, science, and racism without.
And here to keep your host in line, your friendly redneck liberal, Lance Jackson.
This reminds me of the historical trial, the Scopes Monkey trial, 1920, in the 1920s.
Tell us about that.
It was the biology teacher, John T. Scopes, decided to teach the chapter in his book on evolution. And that had always been skipped before because the school board had said, we don't talk about that because we believe in creationism here. And he decided to teach that chapter in the book that was there.
Stirred the pot a little bit.
Mm-hmm. And he violated Tennessee law, because the law in the state of Tennessee said you are not supposed to teach evolution. So he had to pay $100. Somebody paid $100 fine for him. But he was found guilty, because he admitted that he did teach it.
Right.
So he broke the law. But there was a public outpouring, and the radio stations across the United States carried it. It was nationwide. The newspapers all wrote about it, and it brought to the forefront of what should be taught in science class. By the time you and I went to school, even though that was 30 years apart.
Right. Just to
basically evolution was what was taught, and you cannot mention, or very little is said about creation.
Almost the opposite.
In the science classroom. As I used to tell my social studies kids, and this is kind of a lead into the show, the humanities have always talked about these kinds of things, and that's where it's been. But would it behoove us to talk about it in the sciences as well? And just one other thing. You can see a whole lot better when you clean your glasses. Just want to make that comment.
Oh, you finally cleaned them.
I just got done wiping my glasses, and it's like, wow, it's almost too much light in here. I always thought it was kind of dim in here.
Wasn't it just the other day that you were telling me in the conference room that you never clean them because you don't need them clean?
I know. But it helps me see better.
But you like it now.
Well, I don't know. It's a little bit.
Okay.
It's almost too
bright. A little
bright.
jarring.
Yeah, it's a little bit too bright.
Okay.
Should either clean them more often or not clean them.
Or not clean them at all.
Has nothing to do with the topic today. Just throwing that out.
Okay. Just, stick that in. So what exactly, why has this become an issue? And I think it's part of what Lance has already hinted at, and the article talks a little bit about this. It's kind of become this idea that in schools, right, each subject is very defined, and the lines are very drawn on what we do and don't discuss in certain settings. And it's not to say
it's the middle school and high. I don't mean to interrupt, but it's kind of at the middle school and high school, because when you go to the elementary school, typically you have one or maybe two teachers who teach everything, and they do these wonderful things like give you a reading assignment that has to do with a historical event. And so you get to read, and it's a reading assignment, but they can also then ask you questions about the social studies or the historical aspect, or they can give you a science piece to read.
Right.
And then we get to junior high and high school, and you go with your subject matter teacher, and you have 5 to 7 different teachers, and never shall the two meet. So it's kind of, but just, I don't know, just
yeah,
something
no, that's a good point though. Because we educate one way until you get to a certain age. And then all of a sudden what we're saying is it's not the experience that matters. It's the experience that matters in elementary school. And then when you get to middle school and high school, we all of a sudden start to say, now the information's important. Right. Well, because I can even think
back to... I'm taking us off.
But you're talking about the crossing of lines. And I think about, regardless of what people think about the history of Thanksgiving, that was always one of those areas where the crossover was always really clear every year because we'd usually have a reading assignment.
Right.
Then we'd talk about that involved the history of the event, and then we'd have an art project related to it.
Right.
So you'd be doing 3 subjects on a single item.
On one topic.
So, but then you get to high school and a lot of that.
And all of a sudden the content becomes important.
Right. Mm-hmm.
We're going to study my thing, which is the point you were making. We're going to study science.
Yeah.
Or we're going to study history, or we're going to study English.
Right.
And never shall the two meet.
Well, and granted, we wouldn't be doing justice if we didn't say there are obviously some good reasons that it's done that way. It's not just totally arbitrary. Part of it is the idea that you're getting into more advanced subjects. So it's not realistic to ask, a teacher to be well versed in all of these subjects. You wouldn't have enough teachers because you couldn't find people who really could be truly well versed in something like chemistry, art, history, and English. That just wouldn't be a reasonable request. You'd have to have so much education that we'd probably end up with big teacher shortages because what we could pay them versus what they would end up with wouldn't all be that.
Very true.
But it doesn't mean, right, and we do this a lot, sometimes we go too far. And that's maybe what we're talking about now. And part of why this becomes an issue is it's not that young kids don't ask good questions, but they may not even remember they asked them or remember the answer to them later. In high school, you're at this time where these are where a lot of these things are going to come up, or where kids start to make fun of differences, or start to do some things that maybe as adults we wouldn't consider very tasteful, right? But those things are happening, and now you have even less of an opportunity to talk about that. So I think that's got to be right. Part of why this has become an issue is, especially on social media, you can find all sorts of stuff on YouTube, on all sorts of different social media. But I think about that particularly because we've talked about some of the conspiracy theories or alternate, quote unquote, alternate science that you can find on places like YouTube that take kids down these rabbit holes that start to point out, and sometimes very compellingly, here's the reason the races are different. And now we don't have any place where we're using the science, which is what these videos have used, right? They've used what they're calling science to make a really strong case. But now we're only supposed to talk about it in social studies, and your social studies teacher may not be well versed in the science.
Well, the science education researcher, Brian Donovan of the nonprofit BSCS Science Learning says, I know this is threatening to science teachers, but quote, the thing to remember is that kids are already making sense of race and biology, but with no guidance. So as you point out, the students are already discussing this or forming opinions of this with no adult supervision or no adult guidance from the classroom. So if they're already doing it, the argument then could be made is, well, why not give them some supervision and give them some factual basis from which to draw on while they're trying to form their opinions? So
for people that don't know, right, Lance is a lifelong educator, about 35 years, I think we figured out the other day, and has educated people in, a number of different ways in terms of not necessarily subject material, but in a formal classroom setting, as a coach, as a podcaster and radio host. But in the process of what you spent most of your career in, right, high school history education, did you see the problem with doing things the way they're done for the most part right now in terms of that very hard and fast line with the subjects? Did you really see it occurring with students where they were coming up with questions that weren't getting answered because of the hard lines of subjects?
It limited their learning in such a way that I think it was a detriment to the formation of them being able to think. Because it was like, okay, well, that's a really good point, but we can't talk about that because we have to learn about X, or if it was history class, we have to learn about the XYZ affair. We have this that we have to cover. So your question is really well thought out,
but we can't take time.
But we're not going to talk about it. We need to do that, but I need to get Miss Smith over there in the math department. I need to get Mr. Jones over there from the science department and bring them in here because I don't really know enough about this to talk intelligently about it. But the three of us, that would make a great symposium sometime in the lunchroom. And the kids are like, yeah, well, forget about it. It's not that important. And you missed an opportunity to have a general class discussion about a topic that the kids were interested in. And let's face it, whether you're a young person or an older person, whether you're in school or out of school, you're more interested in learning the things that you're interested about.
Sure.
So when someone asks you a question about something, that is the best time to teach them because they have an interest in it at that point in time. And to miss those opportunities makes me cringe as an educator, whether it's with you or our interns or
anything
on my basketball floor. If someone's going to ask a question, they're obviously interested in it to some level.
Right.
Now, the key is
they're curious.
You don't talk about it so much that they become bored with it. You have to be able to read them and find out when they've got enough information. It's like people always say with little kids. Well, they ask so many questions. How do I know where to stop? Well, you stop when they're not interested anymore.
When they stop.
Right. When they stop asking the question or when they're not, when you look at them and they're ready to go play.
Yeah.
Then you let them go play because obviously then you've given them enough information to cover their interest level at that point. So yes, I mean, it's a long answer to your question, but that's my feelings on that.
We're going to talk a little bit more about what's actually being done because there is and I'm using air quotes here, study underway from biology teachers across the country that are trying to address this head on. So we're going to look at exactly what that entails. But before we do, it's important we take a moment, Lance, and remind people, what are we trying to accomplish on the State of Us, right? We're a member of a network called TrueChat, and we're all pursuing common goals on these different programs. What is that goal?
Well, our mission here at TrueChat is to educate people by providing honest, open, and respectful conversations.
More to come on Science Class Defies Racism with Genetics. Keep it here on The State of Us, and we'll be right back.
We are The State of Us. Here's your host, Justin T. Weller.
The New York Times reports that in a study starting this month, a group of biology teachers from across the country will address the question of racism and genetics head on. They are testing the idea that science classrooms may be the best place to provide a buffer against the unfounded genetic rationales for human difference that often become the basis for racial intolerance. We're going to break this down here in just a second, but before we do, if you want to follow along, thestateofus.org, thestateofus.org, our website, we've got this article linked there. So if you want to see for yourself, you scroll all the way down to the bottom of the page, you'll see all the linked articles. And before you get there too, you'll see the books that have been featured on the program recently, as well as some of our upcoming books. So if you're interested in what we've read here on the program, want to pick up a copy for yourself, it's a great place to do it. So Lance, we've gone through this article, right? And there's a lot of different stuff. But what's the gist of this program they're putting in place? The teaching method there.
Well, basically they've brought teachers who are interested in doing this together to show them the program and then to ask them what their fears are. And what I like about it is that they're training these teachers and they're saying, number one, these teachers, again, have an interest. Oh, there we go. Ding, ding, ding. Right. The teacher has an interest in learning this. So they're coming to it. So they're going to listen to it with open minds, and they are giving them a scenario, whereas there are going to be two people, two fictional characters who bring their thoughts of DNA and genetics to the race issue. And then throughout the lessons, it will talk about how both of them have some truth in their beliefs, but how both of them are also wrong. And so it opens up a discussion as to, well, I kind of feel the same way as, the first person, and they give them names, but, they say, you could say as a student, you're like, well, I connect with the first person or I believe more like the second person. And then it allows the teacher of the class to then talk about, okay, we know that this, we can say a little bit about this and this, but there's this, and this that also factor into these decisions, so that the correct answer is that neither one of these students has the right answer when we talk about DNA and genetics. And the important thing here is Dr. Donovan also talks about how for most Americans, middle school and high schools are the first and maybe the only place that they're taught about genetics.
Right.
So if we're not going to do it here, then we're going to release people
into the world
from high school out into the world who have never had a class on this, who've never had any formal training or education on this. So that's kind of the plus side as to why they're promoting this. You know, we're going to talk about in the third part, well, why would people resist this? And there are people out there that are doing it. And some of them are teachers and some administrators, some parents, but you know, the pro people, the people that are behind us that want to do it say, hey, this may be the only opportunity where people get this information, and we're doing them a disservice if we don't do more with it than what we're currently doing.
Well, and it's important to note too that Dr. Donovan actually did a pilot study prior to this where he secured a research grant from the National Science Foundation, and students in 8 classrooms exposed to a rudimentary version of what they're now doing, this curriculum, were less likely than others to endorse statements suggesting that racial groups have defining qualities that are determined simply by genes. The new study will measure the curriculum's effects on such attitudes by asking students to fill out surveys before and after taking the unit. So there is, to people who get into the, you know, yes, we want education to have a certain level of leeway to it, but we also want to be able to do some kind of measurement of if what we're doing has any success. They're taking, notice too, surveys, not tests.
Yes.
Right? Surveys on their beliefs and opinions.
How did you feel before you did this lesson or you did this chapter, and how do you feel afterwards?
Right. And that may even be, and this is a different conversation, but the important difference between a survey and a test and what they tell you can be very insightful, because are we more interested in, could you regurgitate this in the way that I asked you to regurgitate this? Or am I more interested in what do you take away after what I talked to you about?
After we had our discussions and we had our lessons, what did you feel was the most important, and what do you remember? Well, and it also, what I like about it is, and you know, people are going to say, oh, but you've got this. The curriculum acknowledges that there are minor genetic differences between populations that are related loosely to today's racial categories, as it says in the article. But the curriculum also says what the geneticists, all right, the people who study all this stuff, have always said, and that is people inherit their environment and their culture with their genes. And it's a very daunting task to disentangle which one has the most effect on people. Yeah. So it breaks down. I mean, it even goes so far as to admit, okay, yeah, there are some things that, you know, the DNA and stuff has some kind of connection to, but there are all these other things out there too. And honestly, we as scientists, we don't know. So if we as scientists don't know and we study this stuff all the time, then what you're reading on the internet isn't necessarily true when these people say, well, the facts show that blah, 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 because we're the experts. We're the ones.
And we don't know.
And we don't really know. And that starts that whole conversation where, that's really cool. That's kind of interesting, because I'm reading all this stuff out there, or I hear my parents, or I hear the adults that I'm around, or my friends, and they're saying, well, I read that da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And it's like, wow, I just learned that we really don't know that much about this stuff, that there are a lot of different factors that go. And then the hope would be that then we as a society start to understand even more so than many of us do, that we are very similar in our makeup. And, you know, there are a lot of factors in our differences. It's not our genetics. It's not our DNA. But there are a lot of factors that go into our differences. But the bottom line is we're pretty much the same.
Well, and here's the here's what they talk about in the article is here's how the curriculum works or what it's based around. The lessons are structured around two fictional teenagers. So they immediately are making it very real for the kids by saying, these are two people your age.
Right. Which is what I kind of alluded to, but you're getting into the specifics of it now.
And their names are Robin and Taylor. So we've chosen two gender neutral names, right? Or stereotypically gender neutral names, who both understand that the differences between the DNA in any two people make up about 0.1% of their genome, but they disagree about how those differences intersect with race. So they're starting with, and I think this is key, they're starting with a foundational acceptance of what we know to be true, right? 0.1% of the genome is made up of this portion. So they're starting with that understanding. So we start with a common base, right? But then we disagree about how those actually are different based on races.
Right.
And of course, the whole point of all this is that, neither of them is actually completely right. And through the emergence of the conversation the two have or the arguments they make, the hope is that kids themselves who are observing this come to that conclusion and say, well, wait a minute, Robin said this and Taylor said that, but neither of them really have that quite right. Here's the way that's a problem. Here's the way that's wrong. I wanted to ask you though, Lance, because part of what you talked about is this. Scientists themselves who study this, right? Mm-hmm. They don't fully understand or fully know yet. Maybe it's not understand exactly quite how it all fits together.
Right.
Do you think that part of the problem that we sometimes run into in the education system is this notion, and I don't think I don't want to put blame on anybody because I don't think it's just teachers or just administrators. I think it's a societal thing. This expectation that if you're teaching something, then you must know, you must be the authoritative source of answer, and saying that I don't know, or we're not sure yet, just as a field, forget me, is somehow forbidden, that it's not okay to really do that. And it's not a written rule anywhere, right? I mean, we don't tell teachers that it's not okay to tell a kid, well, we don't really know, But do you think is that a good thing that we do it that way? Or is it more harmful to kids that we don't ever admit that to them?
Well, I think it's harmful, and I never did that.
Right.
So I don't know what you say. Yes, there are many teachers that do that, and I think it's harmful. I didn't do that. It's like when I first started my class and I said, okay, where did the textbook opens up with in history, where were the first people on earth, and that dynamics. And, so the kids come up, they know, they find them. And then I go, okay, but what if Johnny goes home today and he digs up bones in his backyard, and they go, oh, they murdered somebody. I said, no, we bring the scientists in and they find out that they're 3 million years older than any bones we've ever found. They go, well, then that would mean that people had to be here first before these other places. I said, right. So when I teach you this, I'm teaching you what we know now, but it doesn't mean that it's not going to change. And I do that. I did that on purpose to tell them that, okay, in this history class, we're going to learn things, but I want you to question, because this is how we look at it now. That doesn't mean we're always going to look at it the same way. It doesn't mean that we're not going to be given a different set of facts at some point. We're going to get more information that changes our opinion. And I want them to know that that's okay. So that's the way I taught. I think it is very wrong. I think you are correct that we do that in education. And the other side of it is, if I didn't know something, I never tried to fake it. I'm like, hey, that's a great question. I don't know. But I'll tell you what, you look it up tonight. I'll look it up and we'll come back and we'll see what we found and we'll compare notes. But most teachers are not comfortable. They see that as a sign of weakness. And most administrators will tell you, well, you don't want to do that because then the kids will jump on you. Oh, you don't know something. Oh, you're the teacher. And there's that expectation from the kids. But I think once you show them that you're human and you don't know everything, and that we as educators don't know everything, and it's more gray than it is black and white, I think you open their minds up even more and make them even, and the most important thing I think, which is where you're going, you make them even more accepting by doing that.
So the next thing we get to is we talk about, which is what we just started to kind of hint at, the balance and how do we actually structure these conversations in a way, not just because this is so much bigger, right, than just racism in science class and talking about genetics. It's bigger than that.
And trying to break down because you're trying to break down the stereotypes, right?
Right. I mean, the end goal, and this is what we'll let you think about this here for just a minute, is the purpose of education, of an educator, to bestow knowledge on those they're educating, or is the purpose to facilitate an environment where knowledge can be realized? I don't know. And maybe it's not just wholly one or the other, but think about that for a minute, because that's what we're going to talk about here in just a second. We've been talking about science class, defying racism with genetics, and opening the door to conversations across subject areas. Keep it here on The State of Us, and we'll be right back.
We are The State of Us. Here's your host, Justin T. Weller.
The New York Times reports on a new study out across the nation that select biology teachers are participating in that essentially lays out a fictitious scenario between Robin and Taylor, two teenagers who both understand that the differences between the DNA in any two people make up about 0.1% of their entire genome. So a little itty bitty tiny portion. But Robin and Taylor disagree about how those differences intersect with race. And the whole purpose of this is to lead students and educators through a lesson, essentially, or a group of lessons, a program that helps them come to realize that neither side, neither Robin nor Taylor, are fully arguing is 100% correct. And in some cases, it's not so much that it's not correct as it's a little more gray than maybe it's always made out to be. And that leads us into what we're talking about now. The question I posed before the break in our last segment, at the end of the last segment, Lance, the purpose of an educator. And notice I say educator, not teacher, because I think it transcends, right? It's not just about in the classroom. That's, of course, the setting that we're discussing now. But even in the professional world, this happens a lot too, right? If you're the boss and you're teaching workers about something, or you want them to do something, right? Or you want them to do something new, yes. Or there's a new policy in the office or on the factory floor. The way you approach it will many times will determine how successful it is accepted by the people that you're trying to teach. So is the role of the educator, and this is where we get into some of, I think, what causes, right, the challenges both for the educator themselves, because they're working on their preconceived notion of what their job is, but they're also working on the notion of what their boss tells them their job is, what they're going to get paid to do, which varies not only from state to state based on laws, but also from community to community and administration to administration, right? So there's a lot of variance in this. And that's not to say anything of what Lance highlighted in the first segment, which is the difference, the way that we approach elementary school versus the way that we approach everything from middle school and on, which is a very more segmented approach to things. So, Lance, what's the pushback from administrators on doing something like this? Because that's part of what the article talks about, right? It's not necessarily that, because people might go, well, administrators are racist, so they don't want. Let's set that one aside, because I think that's an obvious one. I don't think that's most cases, right? Most administrators are worried about what if we go down this road? Well, anytime you do anything different from the norm, you're going to get pushback, or you fear the pushback from the community, from the parents, from the students, from your profession, from your teachers. You're going to, well, I don't want to do this, or remember the people, the teachers, the educators that learned about this program were volunteers. Right. So if you hear this as the building administrator or as the superintendent of your district and you want it taught, you're bringing it back maybe to people who aren't comfortable to do it. So you're going to get pushback that way. So, I mean, that's just one realm. Or
Or your teacher reaches out to you and says, well, I really want to do this. Well, now are you going to upset some local members of your community who have very strong feelings about it? So, we've never had a problem before in biology class. So I don't need problems because I want my school to run smoothly. I don't want to actually, here comes my bias. Okay. I don't want to actually educate people. I just want to keep a smooth running company here. And we're not going to do anything to ruffle anybody's feathers that might actually cause people to stop and think and challenge their lifelong thoughts. We don't want to do that because then all of a sudden I have, instead of 2 parents at the board meeting, I have 100 parents, and I have people talking about us down at the local pizza parlor. And boy, I don't want that, because if we just continue to fly under the radar and give the kids their diplomas, everybody's going to be fine. And we're not going to have any problem passing the next bond issue to keep the building open and to buy supplies and to keep the buses running. And since I have to go to the people for my tax dollars, I don't want to do anything to ruffle anybody's feathers. So what we do then is we don't then open up our children's minds to different things. And then we keep letting this is my opinion again, we keep letting these stereotypes
fester.
Yes. And continue. Okay. And what I really liked about this, that's the why, to answer your question. But what I liked about this, and I think it's so important on a broader level of how we can get back together as a society and not have these 2 camps that we seem to be sitting in. And it says that the one student, Taylor, that you mentioned, eventually had to, who had downplayed the significance of race, eventually had to admit that there were some proportionally small differences between population groups. And Robin had to acknowledge having overemphasized the amount of DNA differences between the races. So the curriculum shows that, hey, you know what? It's okay to learn something that forces you to change your opinion. Mm-hmm. That is something that I think that is one reason, a major reason why we're in these 2 camps, which we talk about all the times. And, we try to bring people back together. That's what we're trying to do, is to educate people, bring people together so that we can start to converse on an intellectual and proper level so that we can come to some conclusions and move the country forward. Because we know from all the things we've done that the majority of people agree on the top 20 issues facing us in the upcoming election, that there's a majority of people that agree we should do X. Mm-hmm. But they can't get out of their 2 camps enough to talk civilly to one another to get it done, because then that's admitting that, well, I might not be totally right. And here's a curriculum in a science class where people are bringing in their biases, and then they're both, in the example, admitting, well, my bias isn't totally correct.
Right.
Wow. What a concept for young people to learn that that's okay. That it's okay to have a bias. It's okay to have a thought. And then when you learn about it, well, it's okay to come off of that. And I'm not a horrible person. And it's okay. And we can now, so you're kind of right and I'm kind of right. So now let's find a middle ground where we can go and solve problem X.
Right.
Whether it's genetics or whether it's DNA or whether it's, gridlock or whether it's climate control or whatever the issue, we find that we can have a common ground and a better understanding. Seems like a win-win for me. But that's why administrators or the curriculum directors who would bring this to their district, but that's why they would be against it, because there are so many people that don't want their little world of their classroom ruffled.
So, I think one of the important things that I noticed about this curriculum, and you and I talked about this before we came on, but I think it's important to mention, it'd be easy to overlook if you weren't thinking about it or if you didn't really notice it. And the thing is that it provides the training, right, for these biology teachers to do the curriculum.
Correct.
Not that there aren't biology teachers who are already well positioned to do it, but you don't want to make that assumption, because I think part of the legitimate pushback that you would have good administrators bringing up is we could get legitimate criticism from parents saying, what training has this biology teacher undergone to talk about this social issue.
Right.
You know, are we just asking them to just do it unstructured? And then you could say, well, no, we have a curriculum and they went through some training on how to lead kids through the curriculum. The problem is and that's why it'll be interesting to see what this study comes away with and the success of it and so forth, is if you pull that away and you just start willy-nilly having schools do this and you're not providing any way for the teachers to become prepared for it, then you're asking for teachers who not only feel uncomfortable doing it, but probably shouldn't be doing it because that's not what they typically do. It doesn't mean they can't, just means that just like the kids, if they're going to be able to lead kids through it, they have to first be able to make sure they've got the understanding that they need. You don't want to just throw them into it. And that's where we get into the danger of some of those mandates that come down where it's like, okay, but how are we supposed to actually implement this? Right. So I just want to put you're
exactly right. Because that's the key component.
Right. Because what we want people to think of is this sounds great, I hope, right, to most people. But at the same time, you probably don't want to just run to your next board meeting with 20 parents and say, we got to start doing this now, right? Without adding the caveat of we want to make sure that the teachers have the resources to do it well. Because no sense in doing it. I mean, you could actually create a lot more harm if you go down this road and start opening up those conversations. And then you have teachers running into stuff. And it's like, well, I don't know how to.
We've just touched the surface of the study and of the curriculum.
Right.
I would highly recommend, as we're running out of time here on the show, for people to go and read the article.
Yes.
Because I'm just scanning even more of the article as we're talking. And there's all kinds of things that I would like to bring up that I think are very well covered in the article that we haven't gotten to discuss.
So if people want to
have questions or you think, wait a minute, this sounds like some kind of liberal agenda or something like that, I would direct you, since we're running out of time and can't talk about it all, to go to the article and read it, because it's much better covered than what we've been able to give it in the last 35 minutes.
Like, for example, one of the things it mentions is in a 2018 survey of 721 students from affluent, majority white high schools, Dr. Donovan found that 1 in 5 agreed with a statement like, quote, members of one racial group are more ambitious than members of another racial group because of genetics, end quote. So, Lance, if people want to read the article, what's the easiest way to go find it? Where do they go?
Well, they go to the show and there's that link there, right?
I mean, they go to our website.
They go to the website.
And what's the website?
Our website?
Yeah.
We have a website?
Yeah. It's I just showed it to you the other day, remember? We were looking at the book list.
I know, but you didn't tell me how to get there.
Oh.
It's TrueChat, right? I always just type in TrueChat.
I tell everybody.
I always type in TrueChat.com.
Thestateofus.org.
Oh, thestateofus.org?
It's even easier.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, I mean, they can go to it's all the same website, but if they go to TrueChat.org,
I know where it is, but
I have to go to the page.
But I don't know how we get there.
Yeah.
You know, it's one of those things like you don't know anybody's phone number anymore.
Right.
Because you just hit their button. I just hit my history and go,
and it
goes right there. Yeah. That's how I do it.
Okay.
I don't know. I guess it would be good to
so
be able
people
to
just
tell
need to go to their history, right? And
right. Go to their history and the State of Us should be there, and just hit your history and it's there. Either that or call me.
Yeah.
And, I'll send you one of my new, business cards.
That's right.
That has it on there, so I don't have to remember stuff like this.
That's true. You even got a business card now. So if we want to get other people to tune in, they listen to this episode, they think it's important that other people tune in. They're going to invite them to listen. This is a syndicated radio program and a podcast. So where can people tell others to listen if they want to hear the podcast?
Stateofus.org
version. That's right. That is a place.
That's where I would go.
They can go there.
Okay. But there's also Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, and anywhere else fine podcasts are found.
For the State of Us on TrueChat in Urbana, Ohio, I'm Justin T. Weller.
And I'm Lance Jackson.
Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Be the change. Be sure to check out our website, thestateofus.org, for books, articles, and all the ways to tune in. thestateofus.org.